How's it going? It's Jim. This is the Espin Nesta here. Folding fat tire bike with a step-through style. Pretty interesting option. Comes in at $1,899, and that included the front and rear rack system with it. Espin did send me this bike, and this is going to be one of my unbiased reviews, just like anything that I either bought or was given. See my unboxing. This thing was boxed like a champ. They really did a great job boxing. Probably one of the best boxing jobs as far as protecting the bike I've seen. So on the right side of the bike here, we got the chain ring and the rear cassette. This is an 8-speed system with an S-Ride, who I had not heard of before, rear derailleur. Seems like it works just fine. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get up to the trigger. But down here you do have the lighting wire for the lighting and the rear derailleur lighting, and you do have a little clear plastic chain guard, chain stay protector right there. We got a 48 volt, 10.5 amp hour, so sort of on the small side of capacity these days, right here mounted in front of the seat. Of course, that is obstructing a little bit of the step through ability, but it still does provide you a good pass through. And once I've gotten used to this, I don't try to step over the back anymore, and it is quite handy. Dimensions for all this will be on both my website and down in the description. So we got the folding mechanism there. It even has a little protector for it, so protecting the frame. Apologize, this frame is a little dusty. I've put over 100 miles on this thing already. A place for either water bottle holder or different accessories that use those same sort of mounting points, so it's nice to have some of that. With the front rack here, you did have to relocate your headlight, and of course when you're riding, that does bring it out of a spot where you can actually easily reach it to adjust it. So I kind of have it set there, and I advise having another light on the handlebars that you could adjust. The default position is actually right on top of the fork brace here, which isn't really that much closer to be able to reach and adjust, but you know, a little bit. Really nice cable management. I like this little zip setup. These little fine Velcros are really nice and tidy. They did a really good job with wire management in my mind. Not a high weight rating on this. I think it was 22 pounds. I've been using a milk crate on there, which is working quite well. We do have a front suspension fork with 80 millimeters of travel. It does have lockout and preload over on the other side. That being said, because most of your weight on this bike, you can even tell looking at this, right? Probably a good 80-90% of your weight is on the back half of the bike. So unless you have something on the front of the bike, on the front rack, that front fork is really lightly loaded, so you aren't getting a ton of the benefit from it. It is still nice to have. It doesn't affect the overall weight that much, and I'll put that overall weight on the screen. I do notice the handling is a little better with just a little bit of load on that front rack. Just going to show you how this bike fits me. It's a step through, so that's pretty easy. Oh geez, but occasionally you do that. When you get used to it, it's not bad at all. But you can also swing your leg over depending on how high you have your seat. I have this for just a little less than my optimum leg extension. So I still have to get up over there, and so with a stop sign or something, I'm kind of on my tippy toes. But it's just kind of what you have to do if you want a nice leg extension. You can drop the seat all the way down to the minimum seat height, but then you actually start to have your arms almost above your shoulders, and that can not be great for long rides at all. So there's a little bit of finickiness with any of these bikes, but I've really liked the step through nature like that. And once you get used to it, it's been great. Suspension seat post, best thing to do on this bike. Buy one. We have basic locking grips, also basic hydraulic brake levers. Here you got an 8-speed S-Ride thumb shifter. It works quite well. It doesn't sound great, and the texturing on this part of your contact with the shifter isn't great, but it all works just fine. We have an adjustable collapsible stem here to go with the folding, and you also can raise and lower the stem, but you can see here you pretty much quickly run out of cable space, so I think that's sort of a not really necessary feature. And the one thing it does present is you can actually align, you can see how much you can change your front handlebar to front wheel alignment, so you have to make sure and have this lined up when you clamp that down. Kind of horizontally rotating thumb throttle here, on the side. You can see it's live in everything but assist level 0. We don't have any throttle assist level 0, which I'm not a huge fan of, but that's the way it is. Again, we have the basic looking levers. They are called Zoom hydraulic disc brakes, even though I don't really see Zoom on them anywhere. And we got 160 millimeter rotors front and rear. On this side of the battery, I have where you charge it up, and then it has an on-off switch. It's nice and recessed, so you're not likely to accidentally bump that, but it is something to note. This also does have the guard here to help support the bike in the folded position. And this little box in here is where your controller is sitting. So you have both nutted front and rear wheels. I guess there's no problem with that. It's just so unusual to see it. Most of them do have nutted in the rear because of the rear hub motor. But, so I guess it makes sense to just have them both. I guess it makes total sense. I just wasn't expecting it. So the hub motor back here is an Espin branded 750 watt hub motor. And as we'll show when we're riding, it does kick up over 1,000 watts in high power demand. So I am pretty sure this is actually a 750 watt nominally rated motor. And from a performance standpoint, it does feel like it is as well. You have your release here for your motor cable. The thing I like about this is you do have a couple built into the frame minders. Even if you didn't have an extra zip tie, you could still, fix your flat. I didn't really talk too much about the 20-inch by 4-inch Monster fat tires. They're kind of a very basic brand. There's some hum when you ride them. They don't seem like they have a lot of flat protection, but to the date of this video and over 100 miles on this bike, I haven't had any issues yet. It kind of has like basic hydraulic brakes, basic levers, 160 millimeter rotors, and the shifting is, but all comes together really well. I don't know what it is, I gotta be honest. Stopping distance was great on this thing. I think it's a combination of the tires and everything really grabbing, kind of the center of gravity on the bike. It just stopped really well. And the shifter, while it's not great, works very well with the bike. It's, the feel of the shifting itself is not like highly refined, but it works very well. You can't fit most panniers on top of this rack rail. I'm going to try putting a basket on the side of it. The whole package of this bike is one of these. This is one of these rare bikes to me, which is actually somewhat better than the sum of its parts. And I'm always amazed at that because most of the time it's the opposite. So I found this bike really fun to ride. I typically don't like fat tire bikes that much. Now you're going to have to look at price as a consumer to see how that fits into what you're looking for. Granted, since I really do think it's worth adding a few things, not very high cost items, but there's a couple additions that would really make this like a true, potentially commuting, some cargo stuff. It's just a really interesting all-purpose bike alternative. The kickstand. I have the kickstand in the absolute bottom position. There's a little adjustment on there, and it still is borderline too high. I was able to find a spot here in the grass where I could turn the handlebars a little. I had a little bit of a hole, and so I usually have to turn the handlebars like this. But the problem is if you ever did get a flat tire or a low leak, when that tire loses air, your bike's just going to fall over. So I wish they'd put a shorter kickstand on there, or a way to really shorten that beyond what it is. But that's a real minor thing. I folded the Espin Nesta. You can see it's in here, but still in my car I had to lay it on the side. So depending on how the space you're going to store this in is configured, the folding feature could really work or not work. It's not easy to move around even with the battery weight off in this configuration. It's very awkward. You really need an extra set of hands. So you can fold it. That is true. So one of my favorite things about the display on the Espin is between the hard copy manual and the online manual, you pretty much have full access to customizing the electronics on this bike, to a certain point, of course. So you can change, of course, kilometers, miles, backlights, all that stuff, and you can bump up the top speed from 20 miles per hour. But you can actually go in and customize the percentage power on each assist level. So this is 750 watt e-bike. You can definitely tell just by the punch it has off the line. The battery's not the biggest in the world at 48 volts, 10.5 amp hours. But as you're going to see at this speed here, I was able to get over 40 miles of range. So if you're recreationally riding, you're going to have tons of range potential, even with a smaller battery. I did change the speed limit brakes. This is about where speed limit 2 was when I first got the bike, and I'll put a graph on where those limits broke off. I removed the speed limiter and I changed some of the percentages settings, and I got a much better feeling off the line and a slow situations bike. You hear this, that hum? It must be a fat tire bike, and we already removed the speed limiter. Alright, well this thing will get up and cruise pretty damn good. We're at 25. We're cruising. These Zoom hydraulic disc brakes do a really great job bringing this thing to stop. Really nice and controlled. Input of the power is really abrupt. So when you first begin riding this bike, that can take you by surprise, and if you happen to have one hand off the handlebars, when that power kicks in, it can actually throw off your balance a little bit, because at above about 15 to 18 miles per hour, to me this bike is a little twitchy. Pretty significant couple second, like a full rotation delay of the assist coming in and out. Likewise, the throttle, as you're going to see here, well, actually, that make liar of me there. Has a lot of a delay. So you can see, you kind of have to get used to that delay. But for some reason, the bike character, the way it rides, maybe the power, the step through nature, it's just really fun. And now that I've been able to dial in the assist levels, it took what kind of felt like a little bit of an out of control bike and made it really approachable. So I recommend changing those settings, even though it kind of recommends not doing so in the manual. There you go. There's the Espin Nesta. Real interesting fat tire bike, folding bike, all-purpose bike. A lot of fun. Way more fun than I was expecting. I don't know how long it will stay in the garage, but I may stay in the garage for a while. I got some company visiting. So, thanks a lot for watching. Leave a comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. I appreciate it.